A new Transformers film is upon us, and for better or for worse, we've got some juicy new characters to sink our teeth into. This is Transformers Studio Series 101 Scourge, the love child of MF Doom and that furnace from Home Alone. This Terrorcon truck is the leader of the titular new faction in Rise of the Beasts. And since I'm recording this before the release of the film, we don't know a whole lot about him, other than he's voiced by the legend, Peter Dinklage. Scourge is definitely an acquired taste, which in layman's terms means it's shit. As a fan of mostly villain characters, they tend to be my favorites in film, so this design sings to me, but it may not to you, and I don't blame you. It's incredibly edgy, like Shadow the Hedgehog or Spencer's. Speaking of the design, one detail in particular I love are his 4 smokestacks sticking out the back. They give him such a mean silhouette, and serve as some of the only truck kibble present on the robot. As for the rest of the design, I'd be hard-pressed not to say it's almost entirely based on concept art for the character, because at least from what we've seen in the trailer, Scourge, while sharing some visual cues and some smaller details with the toy, is pretty different. The toy even lacks the mouth that both the movie and concept art have. But that's not to say this is a bad look either. The foreboding eyes sunken deep into the mask, the chains and the internal burning, the overall worn down paint, and the large stature, there is no denying that Scourge looks mean down to the core. And let's talk about that mask. It's possible it took inspiration from Tarn, using an emblem as a face. However, Scourge here isn't really hiding his face like Tarn was. You can definitely tell Mr. Dinklage is under the mask, screaming. Now, it's no secret that this design takes inspiration from RID 2001, having a semi-truck as the alternate mode. However, that's really where the connections end. It's clear that this Scourge is doing its own thing, and you know what? I'm perfectly okay with it. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, however. Scourge does have some major flaws. This figure is gappy, particularly in the torso. The legs are very hollow, and while it doesn't bug me, it's definitely a problem. Another problem that some could have is the backpack, which look. From what we can see in the movie, Scourge does not have a toy-friendly design, so I think while this definitely sucks, it's at least somewhat understandable. What isn't understandable is the very thin legs. Bro looks like a prime rib steak on 2 little french fries. I don't get this at all. Most of the time the legs look awful. They needed to be bulked up to a fair degree, and if it was because of the arm blade in truck mode, then simply have the arm blade be detachable. And the weird proportions are consistent throughout both modes of this figure. In photos especially, he comes across as lanky and thin, instead of what he looks like in the trailer, which appears to be fairly well built. This is one of the weirdest decisions this toy could have made. Unless, of course, these are accurate, in which case, it's the movie designer's fault. I do have to talk about one thing, however. My Scourge came with a major QC issue right out of the box. His neck ball joint wouldn't fit snugly on the base of the neck, meaning that if I tried to move it at all, it would come flying off. Scourge's head actually came detached, rattling around in the box when he was hand-delivered to me by Peter Dinklage. So I disassembled the torso by unscrewing 2 screws in the back and determined that the collar around the ball joint was too high to accommodate the articulation. So I used a nail file to sand down around the collar, and now I can freely use the ball joint without any hassle. As far as I'm aware, this was an isolated issue with my copy, but in the rare chance you have this problem too, I wanted to offer a solution. Oh, did I mention you could rip off his arm? Yeah, Scourge's big meaty claw can just come off, and you can replace it with a blaster. I don't like this all too much. It's clear from looking at the design of the blaster that it's his claw wrapped around his arm, and we even see this in the trailer. But I don't get why it's a different color from the base figure. Maybe if it looked like it was the same color, or, at least resembled his body, I would use it, but every time I plop it on, I just think it looks out of place. Alright, so transformation. Now if you know me, you know that despite me mostly loving the Bavers designs, I'm an avid Studio Series hater. For the last few years, I've sold most of my old collection because my money could have been better served somewhere else, and a large part of that was due to the transformations. They just weren't fun. However, I'm happy to report that this figure does have a fun and simple transformation, and aside from some scary clear plastic parts, it's relatively stress-free and unparts clashy. If this is the quality of Studio Series moving forward, count me in. However, there is one small issue. While transforming it the first time, I pushed a little too hard on the backpack, and a piece did snap off of the clear plastic. It was a clean cut, so it shouldn't cause any issues in the future. Just be gentle with it. And you can complete the look by attaching the arm cannon to the back of the bed, which is an actual detail from the real truck. And that certainly is a truck. Keeping the mean silhouette from the robot mode, but condensing it into this fiery little truck cab. He looks like Bayverse Prime and Ghost Rider had a crossover with Mad Max, and I am all for it. So Scourge here transforms into what I'm told is a heavily modified 1994 Peterbilt 359, which is actually impossible, as, spoilers, the original casting call says this movie takes place in 1992. It's not a big deal, but it's one that's worth mentioning. What's even funnier is that Bayverse Optimus in the original 2007 Transformers movie transformed into a 1992 Peterbilt 379, a truck that actually existed during the events of Rise of the Beasts. Anyways, back to the design of the truck itself. It can come off a bit try-hard with the chains wrapped around the smokestacks and bumper, the fiery windows peering under this odd sun shield, or whatever it's called, and the general modifications it has. This truck certainly has the robot mode energy. That's about all I have to say that's not negative. This vehicle is a mess, and not in a good way. Unlike Scourge's robot mode, where he can look radically different from his Studio Series figure, we know what Scourge looks like, and we have for a long time. And this is a mediocre job on Hasbro's part. Looking at photos, it's safe to say while Hasbro definitely got a huge amount of details right, the proportions of the cab, the bed, and the wheels are all off, being too long and too skinny. You lose a lot of the mean bulk from the real truck because of it, and the color is gray? We know Scourge is brown. We see him in daylight during a chase, and he is brown. The truck is brown as well, so I'm a little confused why this truck is gray. I'm hoping down the line Takara will continue their premium finish toy line, giving these Studio Series figures a more movie-accurate deco, because this is not it. And that's not even to mention just how gappy this truck is. He has massive holes in the side of his nose, which is for transformation, but it's still really dumb. Both his arms are just sticking out the back of the cab, and his truck bed is an absolute thin mess barely hidden behind the cannon, with his hollow feet hanging off the back, and the large smokestacks I praised in robot mode are now spread out way too far from the cab to look good. I think if they were to have found a way to make the legs bulkier, and to have them collapse in on themselves to make a better bed, one that's more squared and short, to match the real truck, we would have a decent truck. Not perfect, but not this weird. If you look at it from the front bumper to the end of the cab, you have a decent truck. But putting a uselessly long bed on the back makes this truck look so awkward. Studio Series continues to disappoint me. Aside from me wanting to unify my collection to just one style of figures, the figures are always muddled with concept art, weird decisions, and lackluster robots and vehicles. But with every single complaint I just listed about gappiness, hollowness, weird and awful proportions, baffling design decisions, and a messy and overall inaccurate look, I love this toy. I've had so much fun taking photos, transforming it, messing around and taking it apart, learning how it works and troubleshooting the issues, and just how damn good his light piping is. Is this even a remotely good toy from an accuracy standpoint? No, this is awful. But I think this is one of Hasbro's funnest toys in years. So hey, those were my thoughts on Studio Series 101, Scourge. I'm excited to see him in the upcoming movie, and excited to see what future toys he gets. Are you planning on picking him up? Let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, check out one of my older videos. See ya.